Thanks for joining us at the Modern Data Stack Conference. It's been a fantastic day exploring where data and analytics meet the business. We are excited to have the next four gentlemen come on and share their expertise. We have Brian from Interworks, who is going to lead the panel. We have Joseph Ifiegbu from Snap, who is the Director of People Analytics and HR Technology. Raj Sarma from TuneCore is Director of Data Analytics. And Nick, I didn't ask him how to pronounce his last name, so I'm going to say Nick H. from Old Castle Infrastructure, who's the Management of Systems Development. It's been a long day, folks. Thanks for trudging with me, and we're so excited. So Brian, take it away. One reminder for everyone from a programming side is turn on theater mode inside Pathable. It'll allow you to see all the speakers at the same time. So with that, with no further ado, Brian, it's all you.
Hey, thanks, Jason. Yeah, I'm happy to be here, everybody. Again, as Jason said, my name is Brian Bickell. I'm the Director of Data Management over at Interworks. And today we have a great panel for you of three gentlemen, I think, who are doing really interesting things in data analytics and in the modern data stack. So we've only got a short time together. We've got 30 minutes, and I think we should just jump right into it. So I want to start by asking everybody to maybe tell us a little bit about what they're doing in the cloud and what they're doing with data analytics, and really kind of a quick version of how they got there, and maybe what the company does, just in case people aren't familiar with where each of you work. So Nick, can we go ahead and start with you?
Sure, thanks. So Nick Higer, Manager of Systems Development here at Old Castle Infrastructure, and we are a manufacturing company. We produce all the precast concrete things you would bury underneath a new building structure or anything that would deal with water management. And we started our journey to the cloud back in 2019 after our failed implementation of a Azure SQL data warehouse the year prior. And yeah, that's kind of how we got started.
Okay, and Raj.
Hi, everyone. I'm Raj Cerma. I'm Director of Data Analytics with TuneCore. TuneCore is a music distribution company. We help independent artists to get their music out there. I started with the company about a year ago, and I've been brought on specifically to kind of grow the data practice and create strategy and vision for where we want to go with our data analytics practice. Our current state was really where a lot of our analytics was being run off of production data. It still is, and the goal was to really kind of create something where we can create a proper analytics environment, especially since our data needs have exponentially grown over the years. We deal with millions, in fact, billions of rows of data. And so we're trying to kind of move towards a much more modern, sophisticated, and cloud-based architecture so that we can provide real-time analytics.
And Joseph, if you could tell us a little bit about what you've got going on at Snap, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So my name is Joseph, and I'm the Director of HR Tech and People Analytics at Snap. So I've been here about 4 months now, and really, my focus is on the people side of things. So really, right now we're trying to just move away from having like dashboards and insights in our HCM. So right now we use Workday as our HCM. However, what had been happening was there was a lot of, we're trying to kind of build dashboards and kind of glean insights from there. And, that wasn't really, wasn't really scaling for the organization. And so we wanted something more nimble, something that, that was also more user friendly. And so right now we're in the process of trying to build up those foundations for not only the, in terms of like for the data infrastructure, as well as the visualization from people's side. So right now, that's kind of what we're working on and thinking about. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Joseph. I guess to get us started, my first question that I want to direct to Raj is Raj, over at TuneCore, what were the major drivers for modernizing in your data stack in the cloud?
Thanks. I think so. When I started with TuneCore, I think we as a company, we've seen a lot of growth in the last few years, and really the major driver has been how the music industry itself has been shifting, and how people are consuming their music. As you know, that in the past few years, consumption has gone really from downloading music to streaming, and as a result, how we kind of assess royalty and how we pay out our artists, that has also kind of changed. Reporting that we get from our stores has kind of gone from maybe a few 100,000 rows of data to millions and millions of rows of data, which we're ingesting on a monthly basis. And it's really about how, as a business, we should have scaled much more quickly, but we couldn't because we were growing quicker than we could scale. So really, that was the biggest driver. And the next step was to see how we can kind of continue to remain operational, do our day-to-day stuff, but at the same time, try and modernize our data stack to really be able to meet the needs, so to speak, of what our customers need, how quickly we need to pay out royalties, and most importantly, build a practice around data governance, integrity, have real-time analytics to enable our product team, our marketing team, and so on and so forth. And from a technology standpoint, we didn't have a proper data warehouse. We didn't have a proper data pipeline. Everything was being done on production level data, which is not very conducive when you're kind of doing reporting, especially cadence reporting. You don't have historical context on that data. So we really had a lot of different challenges that we had to kind of meet up to. And these were all things that the company was aware of. And most importantly, we wanted to fix this. And so you can see that we had a few different things that were driving us towards modernizing our data stack. So really it came down to doing the proof of concept, understanding what our strategy needs to be, and implementing on that.
Oh, thanks, Raj.
Sure.
Nick, I have a question for you next. I know that with Oldcastle Materials, it sounds like you started this undertaking early last year. What have been some of the benefits you've received from the work that you've done to modernize into the cloud, and what have been the challenges taking an organization like Oldcastle to the cloud?
Sure. So, I mean, the biggest core benefit is bringing all the data silos together. We have 2 different ERPs currently, and then we had a host of different SaaS and on-prem application data that we wanted to bring together to just bring full visibility of what was going on in the business to our leaders and to also the people just in the manufacturing plants, right? And we just weren't able to do that for the 4 or 5 years prior. Once we ended up migrating one of our business units out to NetSuite, we couldn't see from an analytics perspective what was going on. And so, the NetSuite API, it's not fun to manage. They change that data model all the time. And so we needed a quick way to do that. And the team we had was small. And so we really kind of needed some more turnkey products to help us with getting to a place where we could deliver value from a data perspective, especially with the new management team that we had brought on board over the year and a half prior. We want to be a data-driven organization, and we weren't just able to do that with the on-prem data environment that we had. So moving things, out to the cloud and getting on Snowflake and things of that nature were really helpful. Maybe one of the biggest challenges we have is now teaching the business how to use data. So we've taken kind of the next initiative, which is to really put this data in the hands of the business users and let them answer their own questions. Well, how do we do that? Well, quickly, it's been shown that if you don't have a data dictionary, not everybody's going to get apples to apples numbers. And so, we've started up kind of like a Tableau community, and we're trying to create strategic data marts and then the dictionary around those so that we can hand the data back to the business and get IS out of the way of answering those strategic questions that are going to propel our company forward.
Thanks, Nick. Joseph, I think you're in an interesting position on this panel, given that you're doing HR analytics. So I have a question that I think is sort of about the intersection of HR really and the people in an organization and the modernization to the cloud. When you're thinking about an organization undertaking a move to the cloud, there's potential for a lot of churn and a lot of uncertainty around retraining and reskilling and things like that. How have you seen that sort of play out from an HR perspective and also from a professional driving this change?
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of the things where something that has to be done, right? There's this thought, right, like on the product side of things, where the decisions are obviously, at least if you do it right, data driven, right? So for people, if people are what drives the product, and people are more important than your product, so to speak, then that should be data driven as well, not just gut feel, right? And so it's one of those things where for us, the way we've thought about it was we need to get to a place where decision makers, stakeholders have data daily, hourly, whatever, to make decisions that affect people, which in turn can affect the product. So when I think about it from my perspective, this is a very important thing to kind of get right and to do. And so in order to get to that point and show kind of value, for me, starts out by kind of just making sure we kind of provide the simple things, get the simple things done, get it done right. And so that's where, kind of similar to what Raj was saying, like, you have to build a data infrastructure, similar to what Nick is saying, you have to have a data dictionary. Some of those basic things we had to have, right? And so right now we're in the process of, at least a snap, or, we're in the process of, having a data lake, working through building that out. Defining just simple things as definitions is actually interesting, whereby it's like, well, one team defines, let's say the finance team defines headcount as butts and seats, and maybe the HR team defines it a little bit differently. So kind of getting alignment across the business and starting to kind of build those products whereby you can say, hey, finance team, hey, HR team, hey, leadership, here's your headcount, here's your attrition, here's what this looks like. And then beginning to ask more questions. Oh, I can see my headcount here. Wow. Why does it look like this in June? What happened here? What happened? And then begin to kind of build little by little. And I think once that's kind of how we kind of gain that like traction and then kind of go from there. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, and what I'm in the process of doing really right now with the HR function and the rest of the organization. But just starting to be doing the simple things right, I'd say.
Yeah, I couldn't help but notice there was a lot of folks on the panel nodding when you were talking about data dictionaries and consolidating data and just getting like one view of what the KPIs and the metrics in an organization even mean. I've seen a lot of that in my years in consulting, and I think as data management gets to a place in the cloud where it's easier and easier for us to acquire data sets, I'm wondering if that's sort of the next frontier of problems that we're all going to be looking to solve. And I'm curious, if that resonates with you, Raj, or you, Nick, if that makes sense and what you guys think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think acquiring data is probably the easiest thing. It's actually gotten so much easier for us to have large data sets, whether you're talking about the kinds of data that we get from the various DSPs because we're processing royalty payments, or if you have marketing teams which are actively engaged on analytics platforms such as Google Analytics, and you have all of this data, raw data, which comes in from all of these various data sources. I think the challenge really has kind of transitioned from a point where we were previously struggling with how to store all of this data, because storage is not really a problem anymore. Especially with a data warehouse solution like Redshift or Snowflake, storage is a fraction of a cost as what used to be 10 years ago. And you're not even deploying anything on-prem because everything is cloud-based. it really is about your compute. What do you do with all of this data? How do you sift through it? Do you have a team, whether it is data scientists, data analysts, who have the necessary tools and bandwidth to actually sift through this data, make it actionable so that the business can actually gain something out of it? So it definitely is something I'm sure like everybody on this panel can agree with, is that making the data more actionable and insightful is probably the bigger challenge at this point than actually just ingesting data and storing it somewhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. Nick, as you guys are a little bit further down the road with this, did you have significant challenges in operationalizing the data once you had it consolidated? It sounds like from your intro that you are sort of in that place right now where you're still working on getting it out to the business and getting usage and adoption up.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Raj said, bringing data together now is pretty easy, especially if it's just raw data. Yeah, I think so. We one of the reasons I also saw kind of getting to the cloud as beneficial was we were starting a whole new initiative around just standardizing our processes, because we're kind of a 4-year-old startup and we've grown by acquisition. And but every time you bring in a company and you don't say this is the old castle way of doing, order to cash, then you have 40, 50, whatever number of ways of doing it. And I can put a KPI out there, but I'm going to get 40 or 50 different interpretations of that KPI, and so trying to like deliver that really takes more process standardization, right? And so you got to figure out how to get the business to work with you to align your metrics and decide on, okay, we're going to measure ourselves by these things, right? And then we're going to provide insight to those things, and to excel that process or to enhance that or bring the visibility they need to do whatever better. There's a lot of different interesting fears and concerns that you get back from the business, right? Hey, what is it? Is that going to eliminate my job, or all those kinds of different questions? But I think we're starting to get past a lot of those now, and we're getting to, hey, all right, we've got visibility to what we have, what's going on. We can start answering all these key questions and really start standardizing process. And that's really what provides the competitive advantage at the end of the day, right? So yes, we're absolutely still going through that, and there's a lot to work on, but we've started creating those key business relationships as an IS department and as a data department to really get that process and KPI and analytics aligned.
Thanks, Nick. Joseph, I'm interested, in your work at Snap. I mean, I know that Snap is a product company and a very successful one, and I imagine that data drives a lot of insight in terms of product development. How do you feel about kind of the difference between, some of the rigor around product development in startups and in tech firms versus, the departmental level functions like HR and finance and operations? Like, do you kind of see a conflict there, or do you see, like, how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I see it as I feel like there's a lag, so to speak, right? The product side it's the revenue generated side, right? Like, so it's like, okay, well, we need to get that right. We need to kind of make sure we have, the infrastructure, the data, just whatever we need to make sure that this is running right, because that's where the money is, right? So a lot of times what tends to happen is, the revenue side tends to get a lot of that, and then later a lot of the functions like HR, that comes a little bit later. And I think that's really true for really any startup, right? Like, let's sort out the product first, and then we'll work through the other stuff later, right? But as time goes on, then you begin to see that no, this is actually important to kind of make sure that data drives not only the product, but like some on the finance or the HR side, because things tend to start happening like, okay, well, what's going on with our engagement, and how do employees feel about this and that, how in terms of compensation, what's going on there. We need to start understanding that, because again, you start realizing that you want to make sure that you're keeping your talent. You want to make sure that the people that are the great performers stay and things like that. And then, that starts to happen. I would argue that, that should happen from the beginning, but that's kind of, happens few far between. But, I think it's such an important thing. And I see a lot of organizations now begin to kind of really, think about people analytics and HR and analytics earlier on in their life cycle. And so what we're trying to do now is to make sure that, the level that the analytics is on the product side is something we kind of trying to mirror that, right, and bring the same rigor to that. And so what that means is, for example, on the here at Snap on the product side, we have GCP, we have BigQuery, we have Tableau, we have Look, we have all these tools. And so for us, we basically replicated that as well, right? So we're gonna, we're using the same set of tools. We're hiring the same set of kind of talents to be able to help us build and have the same rigor. And as well, we also, having a lot of the peer reviews as well in terms of here's the models we built, here's what we did, and all of those things. How do you think about that? And that thought partnership to kind of make sure we're keeping the same level of rigor and quality there as well. So that's kind of how we're approaching it, to answer your question.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you make a really interesting point about people analytics and about retention, right? And I think I can relate running a practice at a consulting firm. I mean, if you think about what we sell and what we market, it is services and it's consulting hours. So retention and making sure we have excellent people are really the business for us. So I can certainly sympathize with that, and I'll just mirror what you say, that I think our tooling in that area is probably behind our tooling in other areas. So it's something that we could work on for sure. So I know we have 30 minutes for this panel. We're kind of running low on time here, so we just have a few more questions. But Raj, I'm curious. A question asked to you is in your move to the cloud and in your kind of journey to the cloud for data management, what other alternatives did you look at? Was it always a given that it was going to be in the cloud, or did you seriously consider any on-premise solutions? Or tell us kind of how that played out.
I mean, to be very honest, like our business runs in the cloud. It's so we really don't have that many on-premise deployments. I think one of our legacy deployments was with ClickView, which was probably done a few years ago, and it was sitting in a server somewhere that nobody had even thought of until, I think someone unplugged it by mistake, and one team started screaming. So we were like, oh, so there's some kind of a reporting engine running somewhere. But that obviously gives us pause to kind of think about how we want to deploy a solution. Because it's not just about solving a problem, it's about having an elegant solution, something that can be sustainable, it's scalable, and most importantly, it actually works without creating more issues for you. So I think without a shadow of doubt, for me, when I think about executing on these kinds of solutions, being in the cloud is a no-brainer. You don't want to have to deal with the actual sort of like hardware, the implementation, and all of those things. In my career, I've actually gone through those cycles. I know that there is an entire development phase that is kind of allocated just for that. And it pushes your development cycle by at least another 6 to 8 months, depending on how you kind of deploy the hardware and the infrastructure. So yeah, being in the cloud was always something that was a given. And when we look at the technology out there now, whether it is your ETL pipe, the data pipeline, what do you want to use for warehousing, visualization, I think Tableau is a solution we went with, which is, along with Power BI, are probably two solutions which do have on-prem options, but it really depends on how you want to scale and control the data. And it probably comes with some kind of level of regulation, privacy concerns, and those kinds of things, which we kind of spoke with the vendors to make sure not all of that was addressed. And finally, when we put the stack together for ourselves, where we chose Snowflake, Tableau, and we had Matillion for our pipeline, it really kind of came together that having a cloud-based stack made the most sense. And when we did the proof of concept, to really see where it kind of falls for us, yeah, the decision was pretty straightforward. So yeah, for us at this point, I don't see us ever, I don't want to say ever, but at least in the near future, we won't be moving to anything that is on-prem.
Okay, thanks, Raj.
Sure.
We've only got 5 minutes left, so I have one final question that I want to get everybody's insight on. So I'm going to start with Nick, and then we'll kind of move through everybody here. But you know, having done this already, what advice do you have for anyone out there on the panel, you know, in the webinar who's listening, who's trying to undertake a data modernization effort?
Sure. So I think the first thing you got to do is align it with a business-oriented project, because that's how you're going to get sponsored. At the end of the day, you need sponsorship. Then when it comes to, you know, really consolidating the data, think not just about what it's going to take to stand it up, and don't just go with a tool because it's cool. Go with a tool because it provides scalability, sustainability, and you know, a low level of maintenance, because that allows you to continue to innovate.
Okay, and Joseph, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, that's to add on to what Nick said. I think just speak to people, right? Like we have a whole community of people that have built this over and over again, and so I would just say, you know, reach out, see what, you know, what worked for people, what didn't. I think that has really helped me in terms of, you know, I don't have to try something if I know someone else has tried it and it didn't work, and why didn't it work, and things like that. So I think that's the first thing. And then if you, in terms of what you want to do, just you know, look at, you know, get something, you know, that's easy to use, right? Ease of use is so important. And then utility, right? I don't know what Nick said, not because it's cool, it looks cool, but can you use it? Is it usable, right? So does it work for you? So I think just pay attention to those two things. I think you'll be all right. So yeah.
Yeah, and Raj, what do you think?
I'll actually echo what everyone else is saying. It's pretty much, I think the most important thing to start with is really to understand and identify business needs, and, you know, what it is that you're trying to solve as a problem. I think it's very important to reach out to the key stakeholders within the company, identify what it is that they need and what they're not getting, and build a project around that. And it's as simple as that. And most importantly, I think you have to create a strategy around anything when it comes to problem solving. So which means you have to identify some of the bottlenecks that you have, you know, clearly kind of chalk out the problems you're looking to solve and build strategy, and reach out to a whole bunch of vendors, not just one or two. I think it's very important to kind of understand which solutions you want to go with. And I think, at least from my own experience, I'll say this: having vendors communicate with you, maybe even doing a proof of concept, is very, very important. It's valuable because stakeholders get to see pretty much the proof in the pudding, because otherwise you could put out as many decks as you want. If people don't see value, and if they don't see that actually manifesting in terms of like a solution, it's going to be hard to find traction for your project. So having a proof of concept is definitely valuable before you kind of, you know, firm up like what kind of project you want and how you want to go about implementing it.
Yeah, I think you three have been very insightful commentators on that issue. So you didn't leave me much to work with. But to give my opinion on it, you know, having seen a lot of cloud migrations and a lot of data analytics projects, I think everything you said was valid. And I would just add that, you know, every one of these vendors that you'd be considering in the cloud, they all have exceptionally good trials. It's all very easy to start working. You know, these things are all pay as you go, even if you do run out of a trial. So it definitely makes sense to identify a small POC or pilot and start to deliver that work and show the value, and then you know, circle back from there, and then keep it moving forward. So I think you know, we're in a place right now where it's really easy to get started on these things.
I'll add one more thing, and that is that I think resourcing is an important thing for every company to consider, because you don't always have the skill set and the talent on board. So depending on what your project is, always make sure to partner with the right people, whether it means bringing people from externally or hiring. So that's another thing to always keep in mind.
Great. Well, hey, I appreciate it, everybody. And it looks like we're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to pass it back to Jason.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick, Raj, Joseph, Brian. Good stuff. Really good stuff. So thanks for being a part of our Business Analytics Day at the Modern Data Stack Conference. We hope you found the content really useful. We hope you found it to be shareable when we send out the recordings. And just a couple of reminders. I wanted to ask you to fill out an audience survey. There's a super short audience survey to take. You can find it in the conference chat. Also, be sure to look up today for an email that will include the day one event survey. And so, I'm sorry, there's two surveys we're asking you to do. First, the audience survey, and then the second is a day one event survey. We're going to be doing this event again, so your feedback is very helpful to us to help shape future events. Before you leave, we have a word from our panel sponsor, and then I'm going to come back with some closing thoughts, and then we'll be concluding and saying goodbye. Well, thank you again for talking. I think some themes that I picked up on today are two. One, DBT was mentioned a bunch of different times from a bunch of different panelists, so I guess that is definitely a tool you should check out. I heard a lot about bringing the analyst upstream in the process rather than the analyst or the analysis group being a service department, like bring them up so that they can help the business ask smarter questions. I heard that theme a lot about how using thoughtful analysis and giving thoughtful insights actually helps craft better questions from the business and elevates everyone's game. We heard some really great visualization techniques from Kate. We heard a lot about data dictionaries, but then another thing that I heard first from the ladies, Gabby and Leah, about building a culture around data is that analysis and data analysis and insights are not just a tool set. There's a lot of education that we get to do, and that's actually where the fun stuff about being an analyst is helping the business be more creative and more thoughtful in what they ask of data. So I hope you've found it useful. I'd love to see your insights that you thought or that you saw in the conference chat. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. So join us at 9 a.m. where we'll kick off with another keynote and then a great executive roundtable fireside chat. Talk to you soon. Thanks.